sing your praise. And when we first
Good afternoon. My name's Steve Olson, and this is the first episode of a program I'm calling Live by Design because there's a design for our life that was predates the foundation of the earth, and we're stepping into that with union that was always available. It was always the intention of the triune God. And I just want to introduce myself kind of on this first one. A lot of people don't know who I am. Welcome for the first time. I'm Steve Olson. Some people call me Pastor, not required. I really want to just thank GAN Network for this endeavor. What an amazing group of people that they have gathered on this network for just the goodness of God to be known. And I have a I have a journey that started back in 1994. I just want to talk about that for a little bit. It'll give you some insight to me. Most people on here don't know me. I know of and have studied a lot of the people that are on this, and I just love everything about it. It's so life-giving. I'm honored to actually know some of them personally and just life-giving relationships with this true gospel message. And so it always hasn't been that. So my journey started back in 1994. I'd been married for 14 years. I met my wife when she wasn't so much running from God, but she was running from God's people. The legalism got too much for her. She grew up in the church. I did not. So when I met her, she was running from churchianity, and I have a motorcycle. I'm actually coming from you in my wood shop here. This is my studio because this is my favorite sanctuary. So I'm starting here. He's like everywhere, and I hear well from him here. But so I'm a woodworker. I'm a pastor. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast, and you'll have videos coming from different locations because God loves to do what you have fun doing. And he likes to do it with you because he's the one that put the desire there to begin with. So, back to the story. I met my wife and I took her well far away from church. And through for that 14 years of marriage, she was sliding into depression from lack of relationship that she once knew with God. And as a result of the pain, she ended up getting born again again. It was a great interruption to my marriage and our way of life. Outlaw biker, new Christian girl, and did not know how this was going to work. So I started going to church with her, but it wasn't, you know, for good intentions. My intentions were I'm going to find the hypocrisy that I know is going to be in that pastor, and that will discredit him, and thereby that will discredit the church. That will discredit Jesus. He will move back out of my house. He moved in without my permission, real uncomfortable. He'll move out of my house. My wife will return back to the girl I met, and everything will be back to normal. Did not work that way for me. I got to the church, and it was cult like from my experience. I had the little bit of Sunday school I had when my mom felt like going to church was very stoic, and this was anything but. It was charismatic. And so, all right, where's the Kool-Aid in this place, you know? But I had my eye. I came to pick a fight, and I wanted to find that hypocrisy that I knew I'd find. To my dismay, I found a pastor that had a passion like I'd never seen. He had a sense of humor. He had a motorcycle. He had a ponytail longer than mine at the time. And he appeared to be the same guy at the pulpit as I would run into at the hardware store or the grocery store. And I need to tell you that I was chronic alcoholic at that time. I mean, I had given up trying to quit because I got tired of breaking promises I meant to keep. Promises were mostly to myself, but if I went 8 hours without drinking, that was quite an accomplishment. So I was showing up even on Sunday mornings, half tanked, a real delight to be around. But what I found, there was a 4 year period um, when I started going to church, and it was good for the time. It was good, solid kingdom teaching for what we knew at the time. And so there was no deprogramming, but all I could do is like get my head around it, you know? I couldn't, I didn't have an encounter. I didn't understand union. I just had head knowledge. And that good theology just made me more miserable as I went because it wasn't playing out in my life. Got it all figured out, but I can't wrap my heart around it. So this entered a 4 year period. The last 2 years, I actually wanted what I seen around, but with no encounter, I couldn't get there. So it came to a head after about 4 years. And at this point, my wife is wondering if we're even going to be able to go the distance, you know, alcoholism just raging. I proclaimed to be, during this period, at the beginning part anyways, to be an atheist. I was probably more an agnostic, but atheist sounded more decisive, so I went with that. But then I started believing it, I just couldn't experience it. So 4 years into this, I'm on my way home from work, and you know, I was a cement worker. The cement workers can do a lot of damage with alcohol real quick. So after work, we had our happy hour, and I'm on my way home, and I get in a catastrophic accident on my way home. I slid through a stop sign in the first snow of the year in front of another car, um, T-boned my truck. It blew the topper off of my truck, blew all my tools out in the field. It ejected me out the back window. My truck landed in one ditch. I landed in a ditch about 500 feet away, and I actually died in that ditch. By the time I woke up, there was red lights, chaos, and carnage all around me, and two officers with their back to me. They were watching the body, and I wake up, and this strange, weighty peace that I'd never experienced. It was just surreal. And I got in a lot of trouble over this. So, anyways, I woke up and I walked up behind the officers and said, "Excuse me." Scared him. Whoa, hi. A dead man walking, you know. And I said, "Could I use your phone? I'd like to call my wife." And he said, okay. So I made the phone call and I said, "I've been in an accident. Were you drunk?" "Yeah." I'm guessing that I'm going to the hospital and then probably to jail. She said, "I'll meet you there." "I don't have to." "Yeah, you don't have to. I'll meet you there." "Yes, dear." So she was wise enough to, let me backtrack. In the ditch, my first experience, you got to understand, this is the epic moment of shame and guilt in my life. You know, if I ever deserved smiting, it would have been right at that moment. And my first impression was, whoa. It's kind of like Isaiah, woe is me. Whoa, you're here. You're large and in charge. You know, and that like Old Testament fear, like in dread, lasted about a second. And it wasn't because of his character, it was just the immensity of this God that was on the scene. And immediately, my dread and my fear was blown out of the water. It's like he reached down and just gave me a sloppy wet kiss right there in the middle of my epic moment of shame. And this is when I said my intro prayer, as what Bill Vanderbush has called it lately. Well, it wasn't a sinner's prayer. My intro prayer was, "Really? You love me in the middle of this? And I'm cleaning this up for TV. Crap. You got me. I can follow a God like you. And in that encounter right there, 30 years of chronic alcoholism was taken away because in the middle of my shame, he removed my shame. And in that safe place, that place of union, my first encounter rewired me from the inside out. All this good head knowledge, theology that I'm studious enough. I had my mind wrapped around it. It seemed like in that one encounter, that one point of union, and all the theology found its proper place. And that was November 10th, 1998. I've been sober since. I have nothing against drinking. It's just a bad idea for me. So that was my first experience with an actual encounter. And so what happens after that? In my zeal, this newfound love and life, I remember after about a year, I was 38 years old. So at about 39, I told my wife, I've lived more life in the last year than I have the previous 38. And he walked me through my legal stuff unscathed. I could have been in prison until my kids were grown up. I walked through that, and an amazing ministry started out of that. Um, it led to we did a sober home that actually it was called Impact Ministries. Because literally on impact, I was rewired from the inside out, and it wasn't. It was a combination of good recovery choices, but identity in Christ, because that's what was missing when I met Jesus face to face, up and close and personal. I found myself, my authentic self that had been covered over with so much stuff over the years, and it was like coming home. And so the point of this ministry, it was identity based, and not to draw them to me, not to do treatment in a traditional fashion, but to introduce them to themselves through Christ. And our main goal was not to gather us or build a big ministry. In fact, Rhonda's my wife, she's amazing. Um, we tell people all the time that our main job is to make ourselves unnecessary. We don't want to draw people to us. We want to introduce them to the freedom found in Jesus. So we did that for a long time. I think about 13 years we ran that. And so this led to a few things. There's a huge difference. We've slid so far in academia. I have nothing wrong with knowing your stuff, but theology really does matter. That's why I'm so grateful for this network and the opportunity to be on here. But if we lead with that over union and encounter and relationship, everything that we do is relational. Over the over the first number of episodes here, I'm going to be talking on a subject. I actually have a book coming out. The title of the book is Kingmaker: Releasing Identity and Inheritance Through Relationship. That's where everything changed, is when I realized my relationship with Jesus, and then I found out who I was, not my imposter self, but back to the authentic version found in him that changed everything. And everything Jesus did made us kings and priests. So now, in like fashion, our job is through relationship to introduce people to Jesus and themselves simultaneously. And so it led me one night, it had been a long time since I got mad in church. I'm on Wednesday night, and I had some relational disappointments going on at the time. And the guy that was preaching was talking about relationship. And he was saying, so you got to invest in relationships. When was the last time he picked up the phone? when was the last time you sent an email? When was the last time you called them? I'm going, I did it, I did it, I did it. They ain't calling me. And I'm just getting madder and madder as the sermon goes on. I started amen, and then pretty soon I started to see the vein in my forehead as he's preaching. And by the end of it, I told my wife, I said, you got the kids. I just got to get out of here. And on the way home, I'm saying, Jesus, what is going on with me that this is coming up? It's been a couple of years since I got mad at a sermon like this. And I got back home and I'm going through some stuff and praying and flipping through the Bible and just talking to Jesus. And I came across 2 Peter 1, verses 2 and 3. And I'm going to read it to you because there's something huge about um, knowledge that comes out of this. So 2 Peter verses 1 and chapter 1 verses 2 and 3. Grace and peace be multiplied to you in the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord, seeing that his divine power has granted, notice that's past tense, to us everything pertaining to life and godliness through the true knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and excellence. So I have a Greek Hebrew Bible, and I noticed that there is a difference between knowledge and true knowledge. So this sent me on a little journey, and knowledge was gnosis, the Greek word gnosis. It's clear and exact knowledge about someone. It's like third party knowledge. So the next one, true knowledge, I looked that up. That was epignosis. It's a compound word meaning supra or super imparted knowledge that comes through relationship, through which all spiritual blessings and gifts come. Whoa, that's a game changer. And that explained what happened to me. I had 4 years of theology. I had gnosis. I learned a lot about God and knowing about him, and without being able to play out in my life just put me in a miserable spot. My drinking increased because I couldn't get hold of what I wanted. But then just one open window, like I said, in my epic moment of shame and guilt, where most people would say, that would have been Smiteville right there. And that's kind of what I would be expecting. But he loved me, and he's had my heart since. There's a huge difference. So, what happened after I had my epignosis experience and the relationship that followed after that? Well, out of my zeal and my gratitude for what God has done for me, and man, I want to do everything I can with my life for Him. Well, then you start educating yourself. And everyone suggests different discipleship programs that you should go through that actually lead me away back into my head and back out of my heart and into striving. Because in discipleship programs, you get rewarded for your behavior modification that comes along with it. And so pretty soon, instead of I'm already pleasing to God, it switches to, okay, to move forward, I have to conform along with this discipleship program so that I look more like the organization that is putting it on. We just got the cart in front of the horse. I am all for. I love studying. I love looking into the Greek and Hebrew, and now I'm looking into the founding fathers that actually are validating breadcrumbs that I've had over the last 30 years. Because every time I would hear someone preach about the wrath of God or the this or the that was not his character, I would go back to my first initial experience with the character of Christ in my epic moment of shame. No punishment, fully pleased. What he did is he looked at what I was lacking in experience with him and provided it. In my most unlovable moment, he loved me. in my most dishonorable moment, he took my shame away and replaced it with honor. It rewired it new birth and this union. And so over the years, I keep defaulting back to that. If there's any verse that shows God as anything but the perfect representation of the character of Christ and his compassion and his love and everything that he's done, if there's a verse that doesn't line up with that um, character of Christ that I experienced in a real up close and personal way, I have to re-examine that verse to make it fit the character of Christ because he is the exact representation of the Father. And so that's a snippet of where I come from, and it's been in and out. The last 5 or 6 years since I've discovered the Christocentric theology that has taken all these breadcrumbs and put it together clearly, concisely, in the intended, authentic fashion. I've heard it on the program here from, I'm not sure who all, but a few people, that orthodoxy has become the new heresy. Well, it's grand time for a reset to get back to the authentic. I, uh, I'm going to be doing someone authentic because the only way to have a real encounter or union with God is to know who you are and know who He is. We're all born into households and we adapt to what we know there and we start believing lies and labels and things that were put on us. Then we get into religion and we get led farther down the road. But all the way through this, and I've been in and out of this, I have an encounter, and until I have come to the full conclusion that life union happened at the cross, it ain't going nowhere, and there is no earning. He did it all, no further transactions. I am living much more consistently in awareness of my union. Prior to that, when it was fleeting, when I got involved in different church activities, doing a whole lot of things that Jesus never required of me, it would it would distract me from the authentic of kenosis, relationship. And I'd start filling my head with knowledge and behavior and trying to do things that I could never do on my own to begin with. And so people get distracted. In Philippians 4, it says, be anxious over nothing. I did a word study on that. And that word anxious actually means distracted or isolated. When we start chasing the wrong thing and start striving and start stepping back into religion instead of the authentic union that we already have, um, we become distracted. And if we follow it long enough, we become isolated, not logistically, but we lose our awareness of the union and the triune God that lives directly inside of us. And that's tragic and and so prevalent. So I'm just excited to be here, and that's just a little bit of who I am. Um, I'm glad to meet you all. I'm going to get the hang of this. I'm used to talking to people. I'm talking to a camera right now. I'm going to try and get really good at this, but I really am excited about what God is doing right now because it's not happening through the pomp and circumstance of a mega church where everyone's flying to it. There's some of that going on. Some of it's genuine, some of it not so much. But what I'm seeing is ordinary people that don't have a platform. I used to get a pulpit pretty often until I got very settled where I am now. And since I started speaking this, I don't have quite as many offers for a pulpit as I used to. I'm slipping. I'm slipping on them. But you know what? I would rather sit right here and speak truth and influence from my workshop. Some days it'll be on my motorcycle, whatever, because church is wherever you are. I hear the best. I have the best conversations with God when I'm doing the desires that He placed in me. What I have fun. He's a fun God. When I'm riding on my motorcycle, man, the conversation is just great. When I'm hanging with my grandkids, that's church. If I'm sitting out in my wood shop or actually working out here, the conversation is great. It's so much. He does life with us. We don't do church together. We're here to do life. So a lot of my broadcasts are going to be here and there. And the next broadcast, I'm actually going to start the series. It's going to be on Kingmaker. Jesus is the Kingmaker, and like produces like. We are to be Kingmakers. And the way to do that is introduce them in a real authentic fashion to the one that knows you best. When we believe who God says we are, that He is pleased with us, that He does live in us, that we do have communion, that we are in life union together, that it has been finished. The word finished in Aramaic is consummated. We all know what consummated means. And that's a merging together. And when we settle on that, we quit striving. And the benefit of it is when we can recognize it in us, we now have eyes for it in other people. We aren't looking for their sin nature. We're looking for their Christ in them. And when we connect on a fashion like that, they get free. They grow into their identity. I'm not conforming them into my image. I want them to be free, to be who they were always created to be in an authentic fashion, that they may be one. Jesus, like Jesus is one with God, us in Him in us, that the world may believe. It hinges on it. It hinges on it. Thank you so much for joining me. Uh, I'll be seeing you soon. This is Live by Design, Steve Olson.